Sister Evelyn.
Excuse me.
Tell those assholes to shut up.
Hey, which way you go? Wait for me! Hang on! Here we go!
What's wrong, Doug?
Nothing, not a thing.
Excuse me.
Well,
Better to cough. It's like makes you 10 times more higher than the crossbreed and the Pineapple Express, man. You're like totally fucking gong show, man.
It's gonna be hot today, Jay.
He's going into convulsions!
A president who's embattled at the moment, and a president who's really based on, and what do I base it on? Not being close to him, but being close to people who are close to him, in the press, I should say, and who watch him carefully, as being very pained at the moment. And certainly, a man who wants to make his mark, and I've never heard anybody ever say that he's that fundamentalist that he believes that the end is nigh. I really, you and I take a different view on that one. But you married to Marjo? No, just you start a little bit the technique.
I really believe that he thinks he's doing the Lord's work. He's always been a very,
well, maybe he's right.
I'm fine.
Yes, you gotta appreciate the lady.
It's still there. Excuse me. I think I've got a little something stuck in my... There it is. Right, here, take a blame.
What are you doing?
Tissue.
What happened? Amy? Did it work?
These
Red! Red! Where'd you come from, man? Where'd you come from?
came back to save us.
You saved us? He got away. I suddenly.
Wouldn't do that.
Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy.
Baba! Baba!
Come on, man.
Wilson.
Achoo!
Hey, you okay? Hey.
Yeah, I'll pick I got you.
You listen to me for just once.
Too early for noise.
Way to go, Kimmy.
Сенс вообще маленький.
We need to get out of here.
Maybe you're a...
I lost my shadow.
Look over here.
Her lungs were rotting, but she clung steadfastly to her brutal life.
Fun.
According to contingency regulation.
Won't let go. I know. And nobody.
You mean...
Class.
Are you okay?
No. Wow. Come on.
My wish is that you get better.
Don't breathe.
Ring, is usually just for...
Nobody's seen.
We're gonna drown.
And now, old Burke.
idea this stopwatch went that high. I'm not shitting you. When we were teaching my daughter to walk, she got up this hill faster than you.
Father.
We've reached the Bellevue County Police.
Dang, it would have been a whole different.
General, we found the Jedi.
Wrapping her in its huge wings and taking her high up into...
Jesus, Kimberly, is that necessary?
You come to stay with your daddy.
After that. Ooh.
Dude, he's not breathing. Can
You okay?
Really little.
Achoo!
Oh, the cuts!
Forget it, Jerry. Go on.
The other mayors have to live in this house after we're gone.
Go on in there, Al, and I'll send everybody in. Just sit down.
The strain.
It's incredible.
That's why I get high.
Come on, buddy.
This is the best fucking part.
On the cathedral steps and the...
Wise up, for Christ's sake.
Two.
Huh?
instead.
Graham. And I know it's something very special. What?
Is for the working man.
Whatever he is, I am terribly allergic.
You know.
Sorry.
He's alive!
Put your hat on.
Get in the pool!
Let's have a happy birthday party.
What the fuck?
Mr. Welcome. You missed a big nut.
I heard.
No! No!
Not to.
That was a terrible idea, Roman.
Come back to bed.
Lieutenant Colonel Mycroft.
I was.
You're not doing anything at all to help.
거기 앉아라.
Sorry.
It's a new toy, huh? You like it? Huh? 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 I want to try and catch that. Come on.
Decimated him.
LA don't want you no more, tough guy.
Vil dere komme oss ut herfra på egen hånd?
What's wrong with him?
Town, that'll be fun.
I know.
As I told you before.
Kilometr zpátky, pod tím velkým mostem.
Karma? It cannot be. Did he say corpse? Oh, don't be ridiculous. What corpse would marry our fifth son? Oh! Mayhew! Silence that blasted coffin!
Теперь Гав-Гав не научит и читать. Как не научить тебе читать?
See, I don't think you understood me.
Here.
Parlez bien à la course.
Real easy, soldier.
Careful now, that balloon could burst, you know.
Do we have any?
Relax. Same medication as last time?
I begin.
Foundation, Eric. I don't give a shit. Eric.
It flows from...
Look!
Hey, listen. You think you could work with...
People just made this.
There's my favorite girl.
Please help me. You said you knew that.
Who's playing Santa? You fucked up.
Shut up.
As you do.
Стрелок-то пьяный, уберитесь.
Pretty sure it's...
Halfway there.
speaking of my one person, there he is. Nick, this is Syra.
And number. The fact is, migrators reject.
Hey, horse.
Fuck with his mom.
I don't think it's fair.
I'll tell you what's fair, what's not.
I don't know if you were.
Monsieur, bonsoir, bienvenue à bord d'Air France. Sur ce Boeing 777-300, vous pouvez ranger votre valise cabine dans les coffres, ça c'est accessoire. Et les bagages de petit format doivent être placés sous le siège avant vous. Les issues de secours doivent rester.
You're the one that cut it. Yeah.
I wear disguise. I want you to park that Big Mac truck right in this little garage.
Reggie, stop coughing!
I'm coughing because you're dust.
Hey, more dust. Natalie, say, please don't kill me. Reggie, stop coughing. You're being.
To be completed.
Flux.
Pay taxes.
Hey.
Mandingo, leave the brother alone.
way Archimedes.
In fact.
So bad.
Oh shit.
London fogged in Congress.
Невероятно. А вы покажите ему свою мощь моего отца.
How on earth did that happen?
Yeah. Drink this.
Security, we're under attack.
It burns. Well, considering we don't know.
What in God's name? Stop blubbering.
I mean, nothing anachronistic, but where does 1869 and 1969 meet?
Oh, fuck you.
What's...
Тысячи лет.
Wyoming? Yeah.
This is what.
Don't start with me. I got a long way to go. I got my. Shut up.
3 hours.
Hello? Excuse me.
Well.
Is this bothering you?
I almost fell over. What are you laughing?
Okay, Monster Man. Anyone asks, that's not what it's called. Okay?
Call it banana boat.
Just make sure you leave the weed too. You know, this can be a gateway drug.
Ahí va.
Ice, we have to get you out of there.
Keep shouting at the top of your lungs. I'd like to be a few years younger. That man gets on my...
Stop on it. You taught us how to do.
What the fuck happened?
Что допился до того, чтобы ходил под себя. Варварки тоже воняют. Что?
I've been a dupe, a pawn.
What they said.
Let's all take our seats now. Let's have dinner.
Straight? Hey, you straight?
And Trig.
This is Malloy, Pliskin. Do you have the...
You want emergency, don't you? Chairman of the Transit Authority.
Everybody, let's try to keep calm. Take your seats.
Accidental awakening.
Ooh, sorry, Z.
Yeah, I'm fine.
On the corner of Jonesboro and Claire, with what can only be described.
That's the test.
Sit down.
Oh no. I think it's fair to say.
I saw that VP.
Come.
Y hay tres.
We've been going at this all day.
Ray.
Yes, what happened with the Black Bandit?
Or Bruce Lee.
He would have got.
Many patients living well into the late 20s.
한파가 폭발할 것만 같다.
Так что вы думаете, Василий Федорович? Ничего, что я с вами денек оставлю?
Yeah, well, I got lots of friends.
Since the war began, now has the upper hand.
Bullshit! Bullshit!
Why does the old man keep his teeth in a glass at night?
It's where he keeps his strength, his spirit. His spirit is in those teeth. Yeah. Oh, you're missing a little strength.
I just work here.
Eminem.
You're feeling it, aren't you?
Yes.
Let's go!
If you're not
He was such
Has a terrible cough.
Warning. Unauthorized awakening. Hibernation mode compromised.
Except me. I'm staying right here, man.
listen. Mastery of score.
By the way, I'm through with Cuervo.
That's a bit uncharitable.
When you...
Baja, Mexico. It's like it's a metal.
Jesus Christ.
Nothing.
No, you have.
Shoot them! What are you all doing? Why don't you?
Let's go.
Don't worry about that smoke, sir. Stop. It's guaranteed.
Winning their respect.
For me.
Right to the top.
Save my life.
Finally, they saw the boy run angrily out of the house. What does that prove?
Not.
Something tells me that you're all wet, Archimedes.
Это вы умеете.
Långt.
Not long after this sorrowful event, a young knight named J.M. Barnaby came into the city. He vowed to...
Sylvia, come on. Do you want some water?
My brother... No, James!
Back to the house. Go on.
Oh.
This weapon.
Masse røyker! Ja, men det er mye mer her ute.
Be okay.
Sorry, don't tell us what to do.
No, it's ugly.
Best you could do from here is take the 5. The shape it's in, 2.5 hours.
Achoo. Barbados, hang on.
Hey, maybe this wasn't the best idea.
He's choking!
Blowjob! Blowjob!
내가 닫으라 그랬지?
닫을까요?
man.
Right now. Well, now you know what to ask, Sam.
I got you. It's okay.
Hold on. Sorry.
Always.
Oh, pardon. She to meet Snake Plissken, baby.
Great idea, Woody.
How you doing? You sure about this?
I hoped his heart would give way.
Don't worry about it. I'll take care of him. Thanks.
Roll up your sleeve. We're going to take some blood.
Really? Yes, you're fucking. There was.
But here's my brother-in-law.
Come on, cough it out like you done before.
He's a very...
All red to the stand.
You're on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't move. What's in your hand? What's in your hand?
Sweet.
Значит, фу, однако.
Big dreams. You all right?
No him, no favors by letting him go on suffer.
Here, look me.
Keep
Yeah, you won't find that shit here.
Rectification procedure, awakening personnel of Unit 8.
clearly gave.
Northwest.
Cap.
Not a teeth. That's my girl.
Vítej zpátky.
Io faccio le due. Allora si è fermato.
Don't do it like that.
What's your problem anyway?
Dove sono le mie scarpe?
No one on the side. Mrs.
Yes! Yeah! So...
Puff, puff, give! Puff, puff, give! Fucking up the rotation. Finch, and I found the story quite hard to follow. May I suggest? Finch? Finch, would you like me to drive? No, he's got that sense of humor.
feel seasick, you should try and...
Cosa c'è adesso? Cosa c'hai?
There's something weird going on out there.
Salieri.
Now, I want a whole new look for Caleb. I don't want this Western costume the way they costume the big...
It's not...
More?
Are you feeling bad, kid?
Просто сгустка болотного тумана.
Policeman.
get out.
Gesundheit.
No more running.
Excuse me.
No, I understand that you have rules about that sort of contraband. It's, yeah, perfectly clear. Alrighty.
Toward you and twist it into place. I'll hold it.
Bless you. Oh, bless you.
Push me.
Population.
А я вот, понимаешь...
But my...
Not together. So you.
Here has the antidote.
I need more dust. Dad, can you grab...
No thanks.
It's all right.
Vicar, what a surprise!
Hey, are you alright?
Let me get something to drink.
The guerrillas still cling to the Kalashnikov, but...
Che spegni la luce?
C'est pas l'odeur normale des chambres, j'imagine.
Ça sent fort.
Looks good on you, though.
She always sneezes same way. 4 times.
Toys.
Doctor recommended it.
No, sorry, Jack.
Clean it out! Guys, stop looking into the camera. I can't use any of it.
What a flash, huh?
What's going on here?